What's up, YouTube? Ryan Panny here. Hope you guys are doing reasonably well. It is time for a review of the new Alter Bridge record, Walk the Sky, out a couple Fridays ago, October 18th. All right, let's get this out of the way right off the bat. Fortress is the best Alter Bridge album, followed closely by The Last Hero, and Blackbird is number 3. If you are a Blackbird fanboy because it came out when you were 13 and it makes you feel all nostalgic, or if you get confused and you think that the masterful title track on Blackbird is somehow representative of the quality of the entire body of work, I strongly urge you to go and re-listen to all 3 albums. Okay, so now that I have alienated at least half my audience, let's dig into Walk the Sky. So this came out just over 3 years to the date after The Last Hero, which was an album that very much continued in the same vein as Fortress before it, being very much a hard rock album, but with quite a pronounced metallic edge, if maybe slightly dialed back from what Fortress was. Still, regardless of degree, that unique blend of stadium hard rock with a chunky riff-centric heavy metal backbone, that, creatively speaking, put Alter Bridge in the enviable position where they kind of occupied this entire island to themselves. And no, not an island of fools. I see your bad jokes coming a mile away, so I just get right out in front of them. But think about it, on these 2 records, they still don't fit into the metal camp, but they don't really fit into the hard rock camp either. And that unique space that they carved out on these 2 records is, to me, what made them so compelling. But seeing as Miles Kennedy and Mark Tremonti each put out 5 different records a year with 5 different bands, it follows that they weren't content to coast on this formula I just described for a 3rd straight album. And Walk the Sky is very different, which is something they teased in promotional interviews for the record. They talked about the influence of synthwave like Gunship on this album. They talked about, actually in the studio documentary, a word that was used to describe the overall mood of this album was the word zen, which had me very intrigued. They made it clear they were gonna steer things in a bit of a different direction for this album. So let's get into this. If it's not implied, I worked hard to form an opinion on this record. I usually have a review out within about a week of a record's release. This time around, I'd say I was ready to shoot something for this, like probably 10 days after it came out, and then life gets in the way, and here we are 2 weeks later. But I worked hard to figure out how I felt about this record. However, that being said, the one thing that I knew instantaneously, and the single greatest thing about Walk the Sky, is production-wise and sonically, it is absolutely flawless. Flawless, with a big, fat, capital F. This is one of the best sounding modern rock albums I have heard. It's expansive, yet it's remarkably easy on the ears for how much is actually going on in terms of the layering. It's definitely got a polish to it, but just in the sense that it is just meticulously layered and mixed. Not at all in the sense that it's artificially glossed up or doctored, so to speak, and there's a difference there. The tones are unbelievable. Every single instrument, every single effect is just perfect sounding. Some of my favorite showcases of this are tracks like the bright and uplifting In the Deep. We got those shimmering guitars in the intro there. Then you have some thicker rhythm guitars gut punching their way through a track like Take the Crown, or Native Son for that matter. Then the drum kit especially really pops on a track like Clear Horizon, which is very energetic. And then to me, the absolute sonic peak of this album would be the dramatic closer, Dying Light. Whether it's just those disgusting, groany, bendy guitars in the middle there, which that must have been a fucking nightmare to track. When you have like weird bends like that, that must have taken a lot of effort. Or it's the acoustic guitars popping in and out of that song, or the keyboards. The layering of all these parts in Dying Light is absolutely breathtaking. When you really sit there and pick apart all those little embellishments and all those moving parts that in summation allow the track to sound so larger than life, it's truly a remarkable undertaking, and it's a remarkable mixing feat, I think, on the part of Elvis Pasquette. And the title track, I'm going to call it, Walking on the Sky, excuse me if I'm not being completely accurate by calling it the title track. That intro in particular is another absurdly well-executed feat of production, shall we say. That intro literally stopped me in my tracks when I first heard it. I was absolutely blown away. This is a moment, I think, more than any on the record, that marks an audible growth for the band album to album. And growth is a beautiful thing. So Walk the Sky is an amazing sounding album. The drums, the guitars, the mix, everything. Amazing sounding album. Now, shifting over to style a little bit. I'm sure anybody watching this video has already heard the fucking record, so you probably have a strong opinion one way or the other on the, I guess, for lack of a more eloquent term, happy hard rock that constitutes the bulk of these songs. In the Deep, Tear Us Apart, Godspeed, Bitter End. You could even include the heavy but triumphant Take the Crown in here. And I gotta be honest, in general, I'm not into it. I think that this aesthetic, sort of vanillafies, to coin a term, Alter Bridge's sound. But the moods on these tracks are cohesive and you can follow them. The thing that actually irritates me the most on Walk the Sky is when the moods are wildly inconsistent within tracks, where you emotionally can't actually follow the band's train of thought. Like, Tear Us Apart is my absolute least favorite song on the album. I fucking hate it. I really think that it's one of the most corny and milquetoast songs of Alter Bridge's career. But at least consistent. Like, that song, you can at least follow the emotional message being conveyed. Whereas a song like Wouldn't You Rather, it's all over the fucking place. It kicks off with this kind of exotic sounding guitar part and then segues into an aggressive heavy metal type riff. But then the chorus is one of the most pop-infused moments on the album, and the chorus is preceded by that exotic guitar part as the pre-chorus, which I think it's harmonic minor being played there. That's why it sounds a little bit exotic. It just makes the track's mood feel so disjointed and discombobulated and all over the place. These parts just don't belong together in the same song. They don't sound like they belong together in the same song. The shifts are so jarring and drastic. Indoctrination too. I can't fucking stand the way this song moves. There's kind of that droopy Alice in Chains type riff that kicks it off, and then we get into that flamboyant, I think it's a sitar being played there, and then the hook is just the most whitewashed thing imaginable. Like, the melody in that hook, do-do-do-do-do-do-do, it's like, it feels like it's a jingle for a car commercial or something, if you were just to extract those notes. It's way too upbeat for the multiple moods that were already trying to be established along the way, building up to it. It's just these different parts of the same song feel so disparate that as a listener, you never really settle in. You never really get comfortable and are able to adjust. It's not eclectic, it's not adventurous, it's not inclusive, it's just confusing. To be fair, Indoctrination kind of would be a snooze fest either way if you just extrapolate the individual parts and put them together more cohesively. Lyrically though, to be fair, I do love what these songs are saying, and that counts for something. The change in emotional disposition on Walk the Sky, for my taste, does negatively impact the music a bit, but the messages here are wonderful. Like, the bitter end maybe is my favorite lyrically, where Miles talks about finding the joy in the here and now and how that keeps him alive, and how he says it's never too late to learn how to start living right. It feels like we're watching Miles or the narrator or whoever learning how to be happy and to be present and to achieve inner peace. It's absolutely beautiful. And it feels like he's learning how to quelch his existential fears about death and mortality as well. And those insights on the bitter end, we see those insights about finding joy in the present blossom on a track like In the Deep. And it's just so wonderful. It makes me so happy to hear. You know what, I don't know how autobiographical this is, but the lyrical narrative here is one of amazing psychological transformation. And that narrative I brought up about psychological transformation really does fit, because elsewhere on the record, like Clear Horizon especially, as well as Dying Light, you get this very tumultuous sense of existential crisis. And the title track has lyrics about escaping. It really feels like this record as a whole is an attempt to resolve this psychological conflict. And hopefully, to my ears, I guess I'm an optimist, it seems like the relatively content and zen, to steal their word, direction of this record reflects some sort of resolution, I would hope. So as much as I don't care for a big chunk of these tracks, I enjoy what they're saying. I can enjoy that. This record is actually super frustrating because the songs that are good on here are fucking great. And it actually kind of reminds me of what I said about Tremonti's Dying Machine record last year. It's the same kind of issue. But seriously, the highlights on Walk the Sky are true highlights. And I just don't want my dislike for the majority of the record to completely overshadow that. For one, I've already been very complimentary towards the closer here, Dying Light. I think it's grand, it's sonically rich. It gives the album an out of place, slightly, but powerful send-off. Godspeed, somewhat unexpectedly, might be my favorite track on the record. Lyrically, arrangement-wise, just overall spirit-wise, it's like a warm, cozy blanket. It's got that big, bright, irresistible hook too, and the first 20 seconds there, where the keys and the synths just glide effortlessly into the distorted guitars, is just wonderful. Clear Horizon too. I love the riff in this song, the way it uses that tricky little ghost note that if you're a guitar player you might catch. And this song definitely makes me wish there was more double bass on this album, because you listen to that explosive chorus and you really feel that energy shot that it gives it. Oh, and Forever Falling I gotta shout out too. I think Mark Tremonti kills it on this song, and I would have no problem with this band being a little bit more of a two-vocalist arrangement. And you know, just to address the synthwave elements on Walk the Sky, you hear it on Pay No Mind pretty prominently, you hear it in little bits and pieces on Godspeed and on the title track. You know what? For my money, I actually don't think there's enough of it on this album. I think if you're gonna do it, go all in on it. It's different, it's exciting. I think it actually complements Miles' vocals pretty well. And I just think it's something they actually should have explored deeper. I think it would have been a really cool, because basically, think about it this way. These parts really only exist as spice in what's otherwise pretty standard rock and hard rock tunes. Sometimes hard rock isn't even a good description of some of the music on here. I think if you're gonna do it, go all in. In the words of Mike Ehrmantraut from Breaking Bad, they took a half measure. So that is frustrating how the good songs on here are really good, but the majority of this album, I just can't get into. And to be perfectly fair, this might be a case, some of this at least, might be a case of Alter Bridge simply not making the type of music that I want to hear them make. I'm sure no one has actually watched my Fortress review, because that was like 6 years ago now, but my whole point about why I loved Fortress so much was that I had always heard this latent potential in Alter Bridge's music for them to bring this metal edge to the forefront and incorporate it much more prominently and fuse it with hard rock. And then they did exactly what I wanted on that record, and I fucking loved it. But then here they are on Walk the Sky, kind of shifting course towards this, to my ears, nauseatingly bland and sanitized hard rock. Totally shifting away from the type of music that I want to hear them make. Because if they were gonna switch it up, I understand if you don't want to make fucking Fortress Part 3, I got it. But if you're gonna switch it up, how about explore this really intriguing synthwave interest that you guys have? Those moments felt like a step forward. Songs like Tear Us Apart and most of Bitter End, those actually feel like a regression. If you'll notice throughout this review, I haven't been sitting here and pointing to a bunch of egregious songwriting blunders that are just tearing this album apart, pun intended, as much as I'm just talking about a band I like not making the type of music that I want to see them make, that I know they're capable of making. And there definitely is a bit of a distinction there, and I think it's important to make that clear. However, I will argue tooth and nail that at their core, the songs on this record are not as strong as the songs on Last Hero, Fortress, or Blackbird for that matter. So it's a big bummer. I don't fucking hate it. I feel let down. And obviously, I'm a big fan of everybody involved here. It's just that Year of the Tiger was better, Living the Dream was better, Dust was better, Dying Machine was better. This is just not the best use of their talents. And we'll leave it at that. Walk the Sky gets a 5 out of 10 from me. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video and are not yet subscribed to my channel, please consider doing so by clicking right over here, as well as checking out any of the other hard rock or metal related content that I publish here on a weekly basis. Really appreciate you watching, liking, disliking, just engaging in any fashion. Twitter, Instagram handle @RyanPandyMusic. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys soon.